So we are going to discuss about the upcoming legislations, mainly driven by Europe. And many of us know that there will be legislations coming. Some of us know that they are going to have an impact. But few of us know exactly what is going to change. And we in Europe, we are seeing that end of this year, there will be EPR coming up, at least the first shot of the definition of EPR, which is based on quality. This is being mainly done in order to, if I may say, to keep Shein and Temu ultra-fast fashion out of Europe. Not only, but also. And the definition of equality is at the moment still vague. There are first examples of what quality means, but what we do see is that brands in Europe, they start to reposition themselves upwards, so they go up with quality. Now, if Zara goes up with quality, you can imagine what is going to happen to Hugo Boss. They will also have to move up in order to differentiate themselves. So it's a super interesting topic, and we are going to structure this workshop in 3 phases. There is a phase of introduction where every one of us will quickly say his background and the company background. I think that's important to understand also the answers. Then there is the 2 questions which we are going to discuss. The first question is about which legislation for you individually is the most important one and why. So every panelist will answer that. And the second question will be around what does it mean now for the textile and garmenting industry? What is the impact? And then we have phase 3, which is the Q&A, where if you have questions, please raise them. Let's start with the first part, which is the introduction of ourselves. And here I would like to hand over first to Mr. Mazzotto, President of IAF, to introduce also this workshop which you organized.
Yeah, thank you. Wait. Hello? Oh, no. Okay. Then, good morning, everybody. Thank you to be here today. We had this idea to have the opportunity to be here in New Delhi with a very different group of people coming from different countries, different experience and professionality, and have this opportunity to discuss about this topic that of course will impact all our industry all over the world, that it's really, really an important moment. I welcome everybody. I'm honored to be here, and I just introduced myself. I'm a few hats in my head because I'm the president of International Apparel Federation, and then we have a big role to try to create bridges, but to put together all the supply chain to try to work in the better way together. I'm represent also Confindustria Moda, that it's the Italian association in the board of Euratex, the European association, and last but not least, I'm working my company that now it's owned by the Richmond Group, the luxury group. Then I have I see from the brand point of view and also from the manufacturer point of view. Then it's I have an opportunity to see different perspective. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I would like to start on my left with the ladies. Mrs. Benko.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Heidi Benko, and I work for Infor. I run strategy for our supply chain business network. If you're not familiar with Infor, we're an enterprise applications company that does industry-specific software, and one of our main industries is apparel and footwear. And one of our core things that we have in that industry is a multi-enterprise supply chain business network. And when we think about all these regulations, it is about how do you comply as a network. So a number of things we've been working on with our customers, and we deal with the brands, we deal with the suppliers, is, how do we help them comply, right? And manage global trade, and now global trade is really changing to not just a transaction of managing orders and shipments, but how sustainable are you? What's that additional material, and where does it come from? So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, my name is Ana Diniz, and I'm here representing the Portuguese Textile and Clothing Association, ATP. In Portugal, this sector, textile and clothing sector, is a huge industry for our economy. We are a small country, but with a big industry for textiles and clothing. We have 8 billion euros of turnover, 125,000 workers in this sector. We are concentrated in the north region of Portugal, and we, as association, we are having a kind of triple mission. We do lobby, we do capacitation, so we help our companies to transform themselves, and we also do promotion at international level, because our sector is mainly doing business, B2B business, for European market and American market. So we need to help our companies to find new clients, new brands. So this is, in a very small, very brief presentation, what we do.
Hi, good morning. My name is Michael Tsai, so I work for Decor. Decor is a global apparel, accessory, and home textile manufacturer. So we provide a full value service, starting from marketing, branding, down through to manufacturing, logistics. So at Decor, we have 3 or 4 things we are most priority. First is our value and culture. So we want to be an ethical and a responsible company in the first place. And the second is our global team. So we have team members from 26 nationalities working in the company, like our Indian team, Rocky and the team. They are here today as well. And then we also build a very strong strategic partnership with both our brand partners and our supply chain partners over the past 32 years. And lastly, but not the least, we really strive to be a global leader in the accessibility, traceability, and response sourcing field. So we have partnership with many international organizations. We actively participate in many activities. So we want to make sure that there's a manufacturer voice on the table. So I think this is really important. And I'm leading the operational supply chain at Decor. At the same time, I'm also the chair of the supervisory board for SLCP. So really happy to be here with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May we continue?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dirk van Tichem. I'm the Director General of Euratex, which is the European Confederation representing the textile and apparel industry across Europe. Our role is to lobby, to represent, to defend the interests of, in the EU, around 200,000 textile companies, generating approximately 170 billion euro. And so we are there as Euratex to represent their interests. We negotiate with the European Commission on the legislation that you put on the program. So happy to contribute later on in the discussion on how successful or not we are.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vidura Ralapanava. I head sustainability for Epic Group. We are a Hong Kong-based apparel manufacturer with manufacturing in Bangladesh, Jordan, Sri Lanka, and from this year onwards, India as well. There's one difference with a lot of my colleagues and me, because I started the fashion industry as a sustainability specialist, not as a business specialist. So the topic that we are talking about, I have a slightly different takes, which is interesting that we will need to consider. But also, I'm also a board member of Cascale. So.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Or for my Desi friends, I should say, Namaste, bhai aur behno. आज आप लोगों के साथ होने का ये जो अवसर मिला है मुझे मेरे लिए बड़ी खुशी की बात है. My father was a diplomat, and we were posted in Delhi for a while, which is where I learned to speak some Hindi. My name is Avedis Seferian. I'm the president and CEO of WRAP, Worldwide Responsible Accredited Production. We're a social compliance certification organization that basically helps factories validate their responsible business practices to prove they are viable vendors for the likes of some of the brands here or anywhere else. If you tour the other parts of Bharat Tech today, you'll see the WRAP logo on a lot of these stalls to showcase that they are certified and are indeed socially responsible, which is something increasingly important in the wake of all this legislation that we're going to discuss, and is a way to help distinguish themselves as competitive, as well as just being compliant in order to meet the regulatory mandates that are coming down the pipe. So I am excited to have this conversation in English, in Hindi, in Portuguese. I mean, we got an Italian. We've got all kinds of options up here. But I think we'll stick with English, Giuseppe. What do you say?
If you want to help me, then yes.
All right.
So let's go to the first question, which is related to which legislation, and it can be also sustainable or a legislation related to sustainability, but which is for you, for your company, for your activity, the most important legislation and why? And honestly, there is no right and wrong. It's not kind of, it's only this. So it's important that we share the know-how, the specific know-how that we do have on various segments with the audience. So maybe we start from you.
This is what I get for speaking a different language, I guess. All right, Giuseppe. So the question is, which is the most important? Is it CSDDD? Is it DPP? Is it ESPR? Is it some forced labor legislation? The answer is yes. It really is a question of understanding that even though we may be deluged by a whole kind of different set of legislations, they really have several things in common, and it is that commonality that is the most important piece. And there's two features to that, in my opinion. First and foremost, either directly or indirectly, all of these legislations impose reporting requirements on multiple stages of the supply chain that ultimately, regardless of who it is that is supposed to be reporting under the law, will devolve down to the manufacturer, right? So if you are in this space, you are going to have to be a lot more forthcoming with your data, which means two things for you. One, you're going to have to get the information, not all of which is necessarily readily in practice done right now. And two, you're going to have to find a way to share this with sort of the next stage in the supply chain because they're going to report upwards. The other thing that is critical here is that, as you said, Giuseppe, a lot of this is driven by Europe. But not only by Europe, there's legislation in the US, there's legislation in the UK, in other parts of the world, in Japan. But even within Europe, there's differing legislations that are not all entirely harmonized. So the other critical factor here is, and this is something that I would encourage Eurotex, I would encourage the IAF to make a policy priority to try to push for as much sort of interoperability as possible, so that the poor factory folks who have to ultimately bear the burden of collecting all this data and reporting it, at least are spared the need of having to do the same thing 50 different times for 50 different people, asking essentially the same question in just 50 different ways, let alone different languages. So I think that would be sort of my starting point for which of these is the most important. They really all are, because they're all at some level or another going to be mandatory. This isn't simply a voluntary effort. It is that connective tissue that I think is the challenge, and I hope that we can address it in a way that is going to be efficient and hopefully relieve the burden on the manufacturer that ultimately has to bear the responsibility for reporting upwards.
Maybe Mr. Ralapanave, from the point of view of a manufacturer, which legislation is impacting you most?
So I'm going to pick two, and for very specific reason. First is actually CSDDD, and in a very particular context of heat stress management. So we know the kind of heat issues that we are having in India, but also all over the world, especially what the super El Nino is going to bring in the next spring to all of the tropics, where we are going to see breaking of temperature records. 99% of apparel factories in the world, not singling out any country, it's in Portugal, it's in Spain, it's in Mexico, it's in Egypt, it's in Jordan, it's in Pakistan, it's in Bangladesh, it's in Sri Lanka and India. Our factories are not designed to manage heat stress. Now, why is this a CSDDD problem? Because it's decent work. And if that's compromised, it will expose the brands to criminal liability, civil and criminal liability. And what will happen is that it will get pushed back to us saying, fix it. And we are not ready. We don't know how to fix it. We don't know the correct solutions. So there is a massive knowledge and implementation gap that is urgent and imminent, which will be a challenge for all of us. The second one is actually SPR and DPP. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I look at it from a sustainability point of view. And to me, ESPR and DPP is a sausage factory problem. If you want to eat a sausage, don't look at how it is made. All the data, the primary data that underline DPP and ESPR are generalized data that has a massive error margin that is not worth reporting on. So if you are really looking at DPP and ESPR as an indicator of what its life cycle emissions or life cycle impact is, we don't have primary data, anything outside tier 1, to really feed into the system. So if you want to think about this as a method to solve the sustainability challenge, rather than a method to solve a reporting challenge, we've got it completely wrong. Why have we got it wrong? Because it's primarily the brands who work with the EU to create the legislation. And what they want is convenience in creating a value that can be reported rather than protecting the integrity of the system and integrity of the ecosystem.
Very interesting points. And I think, Mr. Van Tichem, if you can, from your point of view, your organization is the one which co-creates or co-suggests.
Co-creates is I wish we try to co-create, but indeed, our role in Brussels is to work very closely with the legislator, with the European Commission specifically, in shaping all this legislation. So we are today, like literally today, in meetings with Commission officials, with the JRC, the Joint Research Center, discussing which data points should be included in DPP, how the EPR system should be rolled out in member states. It's our daily bread and butter. And therefore I could talk for hours on all this. But if you ask, respond to your question, what is essential? Just picking maybe 2 points. First is create the legislation is one thing, but the enforcement and the enforceability of legislation, that's what we need to focus on. In Brussels, we are very much in a kind of theoretical bubble, creating sometimes crazy things, talk about due diligence, etc. What we insist with the Commission is to say, whatever legislation you make sure it'll be implemented, it'll be enforced, and that it is enforceable. I mean, the Commission sometimes itself admits that they are issuing law which they will not be able to control on its implementation. So then don't do the law if you cannot control it properly. So enforceability is critically important. And the second one, we all know that all this legislation that is coming out of this EU textile strategy, which was adopted 4 years ago in 2022, the whole purpose is to push the sector to be more sustainable, to reduce our footprint. So that legislation that is now coming out of this vision should reward sustainability. Today, it does not reward sustainability. So companies who invest in sustainability have an additional cost, but they don't get the reward. So we need to rethink the regulatory process that, as a result, those who comply with all those higher quality sustainability requirements get rewarded by the market, by the brands, by the legislator, and that the legislation is not just seen as a punishment. So in Brussels, we think different from the US sometimes. we think too much in terms of sticks and not enough in terms of carrots. So we need to try to convince the Commission, who's they are lawyers, regulators, how can we forbid something, how can we restrict, how can we punish, how can we, instead of creating a regulatory framework that is giving incentives that would again give a bonus, a reward to those entrepreneurs who invest in sustainability, water treatment, etc., etc. So these are, general principles, difficult to translate into specific legislation, but that's what we try to focus on across, whether it's the EPR system, whether it's discussing the DPP data points, forced labor, the whole list. Make sure, once again, it's realistic and enforceable, and two, that, again, companies who comply with the legislation actually benefit from that compliance, and it's not just an additional cost, an additional burden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mazzotto. You have a vast experience, president of IAF, working together also with brands, having your own garmenting company. Based on your experience, which is the legislation which is most impacting you or the brands?
Then all this new common legislation, of course, they impact our industry. There are many worries from the brands, but there are also many opportunity. And what is happening, I think probably all they have an impact, but the eco-design, especially for the big brands, they need to rethink how to build the product, how they need to choose the fabric to use, the possibility of recycling, the possibility to have the repair of the garments, and how to think the waste of the end of the product. On my experience, that I work mostly with all the luxury brand in Europe and in America, there are some very different approach. Somebody, they are talking that, okay, we are ready to do, but in the practical day by day, they are still very worried to change their own. They are talking about sustainability, they are talking about all this coming, but they need to go deeper on this approach and try to change their mind, because there are also a lot of opportunity to really, if they redesign and they think all this process, they can have the possibility of increase the profit and give really and follow the rules, but it's not easy. There are so many different approach. Yes.
It's all interlinked, because eco-design is linked also to EPR. It's linked to the quality. The definition of the quality, I think it's being done now this year. There was a first report coming out beginning of the year where quality was defined in 10 points, and the three most important ones were spirality, resistance to light, as well as resistance to wash cycles, either chemical or laundry. And then you had 7, 8 other points. But I think there is still a revision going on until end of this year, and towards October of this year, a new report will be published where the quality will be defined. And that is going to have a massive impact on the brands, and that is going to have an impact on the textile added value chain. Now, you having such vast activities, international also, which legislation is the one that you think is going to impact you most?
Well, I mean, for a manufacturer who source from 4 continents and also serve the 3 major markets, America, Europe, and also Asia, I think every regulation is impactful, critical to us. And but if we look at it, I think 2 regulations create the most impacts. First is the DPP, because it's really requires the product data on material, on traceability, on recyclability, all through the product's entire life cycles. And so I think the most impactful for DPP is that if a product without DPP, you won't be able to sell it in the European market. It's make the the DPP is like a entry point for market access. So this is the first one we feel most impactful. Second one is due diligence and the forced labor regulations. Again, it makes the market access really, really difficult if you don't have food traceability. If you don't know as a manufacturer, if you don't know where you source your fibers, where you source your yarns, where you source your finished products, and if you don't have that entire life cycle data in place, you won't be able to have the market access into those important markets. But at the same time, we feel that as manufacturer, those regulations not only just a challenge, but also they pose lots of opportunities for us as well, because for us to be proactive rather than reactive, to be prepared, and to build a really robust and holistic management system with your supply chains within your company, build that culture into your business operations, that really gives you a very competitive edge, because if you can provide verifiable, traceable data and a supply chain information to your customers, it can give you a better position and also give you a lot of advantage that other manufacturers might not have. I think for manufacturers, really how to embrace those regulations, not take them as a challenge, not take them as threats, but instead take them as opportunities. How you can optimize your supply chain management, how you can optimize your global sourcing and also manufacturing footprint. Those regulations really help you to understand how to create a better supply chain, resilient and sustainable and compliant, so you can in a better position to be stronger in this competitive world.
Thank you very much for your advice. Mrs. Diniz, Portugal is one of the last strongholds of textiles in Europe. You deal with a lot of Portuguese successful companies. What is the seen from your side, the European side? Where are the people most scared about these legislation or upcoming legislations? Or
I'm not sure if they are scared, but and when I see all these legislations, I think, as said before, they are kind of a puzzle, so they are complementing each other, so they are all important. But if I have to choose one, I will choose DPP. And why? Considering that I'm here representing the manufacturing, and in Portugal we are doing a lot to change our processes to have more sustainable products and sustainable processes. So we are investing in green energy, in less impact chemicals. We are investing in social labor conditions. So we are investing a lot to be sustainable. And most of the times these investments are not rewarded by the market, by the clients. So I think this DPP is a way to reward and to also to give to the consumers more information. Because at this moment, if a consumer wants to buy a sustainable product, they don't have information about what it is more sustainable. So I think what is now our perspective of the piece of the legislation that will change the most and can transform the way our consumers also buy differently is the DPP. So that's why I choose DPP. Of course, all are important. Eco-design is important also. And also waste, textile waste is important. But DPP is the ones that give us more opportunity of changing and also to show what is more sustainable.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Benko, supply chain is where you work since many years.
27.
What is how do you see it?
It's, it's many of them, so it's not one. And it's really what we're seeing is anything that requires going further upstream and capturing all that data, right? And the burden is going to the manufacturers and to get all the other multiple tiers of data. And it's bringing all of it together. Like you said, it's like I'm bringing sustainability data. I'm bringing, understanding of where it was manufactured and was it ethically sourced. So whether it's, whether it's the forced labor or in like the U.S. with the UFLPA, all these companies are trying to reach further upstream and get a better understanding of those up-tier supply chains. And I think some of the challenges too is all the regulations. Some are pushing back. Some there's no fully defined requirements in many cases. So companies are really scrambling on what is it I need to provide, what data points, how to show recycled content and sustainability and where it was manufactured. And it varies by regulation, which is part of the challenge. Some are like, okay, you need bills of lading and you need bills of material and you need invoices. And each brand, I think we were talking about earlier, is asking the suppliers for different information. So I think everyone's focused on all of them. And I wouldn't say there's one particular one, but I think, everyone's focused. The challenge is there's no standard. Everybody's trying to do their best. All the brands are pushing in on the suppliers to get more information. So how do we kind of collectively figure out how to propose more standards as these things are put into place and harmonize them, right? Because they're all, and you said it, asking for the same data. It's the same puzzle pieces that we're trying to build visibility into a sustainable supply chain, ethically sourced, sustainably sourced supply chain.
Very interesting. We will spend the next 7 minutes on question number 2, which is some advice to the textile industry. And I think beyond using AI to try to find out what's happening, what could be your advice to any type of textile companies where you have experience, what they should do, besides also calling Mr. Van Tichem every month and asking him what's happening? The industry, as we heard, is quite unsure what this will mean, but what would you recommend them in a brief nutshell? Who wants to start? You have the mic? Yes.
Sure. Start to capture, it's about data. And how do you capture all the data on a product level, at each material level, what's being produced, figure out how to store the data because you're going to have to provide it. Right, and if you're, apparel manufacturer or textile manufacturer, understand the content, where it's sourced from, and find a way to start capturing that data because it's going to feed all the processes.
Very practical. Thank you.
All right. And that's a great lead in because my advice also is really to be practical. But before that, my first advice is don't rely on AI to solve your problems because that's not going to get you what you think it's going to get you. It's only going to get you in trouble. No, I think on 2 layers, I would advocate for practicality, starting, as I already mentioned, with talking to folks engaging with legislators to have them make the laws be reasonable, more carrot than stick, enforceable, all of those things. But then when it comes to actually imposing those requirements on manufacturers and expecting results, I would truly urge, particularly the buyers, the brands and the retailers, to take an approach that is focused on effectiveness, on substance, not on form. Right? There's a lovely little proverb in Hindi, "Chalti ka naam gadi," which translates roughly to "if it moves, it's a car." Right? And that's really what we want, is we want substance here. We want the information, we want the effect that we want it to have on improving lives, on reducing forced labor, on reporting emissions and the like. But the form is not that important. So I would encourage brands and retailers to truly look at what the various alternatives out there. And I can give you a very simple example in a nutshell, Giuseppe. We've been doing this for social compliance for years now. And there's still too many players out there, brands and retailers, who insist on doing their own proprietary audits at a factory when they already have a RAP certificate or are already part of some other independent, credible scheme. So I would encourage everyone to say, hey, maybe this isn't exactly what I want, but it's close enough. It'll get me there. Let's just take that and not make them do another audit. Let's take the data in this form and not make them change it into this particular thing. So be practical in execution, and to the legislators out there, be practical in design, because the unintended consequences of some of these laws can be tremendously negative. So be practical. Chalti ka naam gaadi.
I'm a bit cautious on collecting data because irrespective how well and how accurate our data is, what happens is that we'll have to report it in a way that our brands ask them to do, irrespective of how sometimes dumb that methodology is. So this is part of the problem of how the legislation is drafted, right? Personally, I take offense on carrot and stick analogies because carrots and sticks are what is used to control donkeys. But when we talk about unintended consequences, the moment you do carrot and sticks, we play cat and mouse. So I think there is a challenge in how to draft effective legislation that actually delivers the outcome intended. The problem in most legislation, and this is not EU specific, but also I've seen it in US and in other countries, is that they keep the brand as a primary and look down on manufacturers in how to do that. Now on the legislation, and I know there are some clauses in CSDDD, for example, of brand manufacturer collaboration is it's implicitly built into this, but it doesn't happen, right? And that is why we have a challenge. But let me put my sustainability hat and ask a very different question. Compliance and legislation are always lagging indicators. Legislation comes from legislators who are working on public sentiment. Public sentiment comes when the problem is too big to handle. In terms of climate, that's what exactly has happened. The kind of legislation we are looking at now, as imperfect as it is, should have been what should be driving this industry 20 years ago. Now it's too late. Real sustainability in this industry still gets unrewarded. So my advice to industry is don't look at legislation as the primary basis of your decision making, because by the time you build it into the system, it's already outdated or it's not solving the problem. And I'll give you a practical example. So we just built our first factory in India. It's designed for carbon neutrality, designed for water positivity, but it's specifically designed to withstand all climate extremes that will impact that particular location. That is thinking about the future and anticipating what is necessary to do that. And none of the legislation that is on the table is actually going to do that. So my ask from the industry is think beyond the legislation. Don't box yourself to it because it's too little, too late.
Thank you very much for this different angle which you brought to the discussion. Before you want to answer already? Or think a little bit, because I would like to talk with Mrs. Diniz about Portugal.
Yeah.
Your members, how are they reacting? What are they doing?
They're doing a lot. So yeah, some of them, they are leading this transformation, so they are not so worried about all this legislation because they are already doing all of this. So of course we have in Portugal a lot of SMEs, and some of them, they are not still ready. So we need to help them to transform and to be ready to comply with all. But regarding your question, I think we are facing difficult times. We know that because we have all this legislation, but the business is not running well. So, and we know that. And in difficult times, I think if I have to give an advice or a suggestion, is collaboration. We need more collaboration between brands and manufacturers, and also we need also more trust and transparency, and taking in consideration that I'm here representing an association. I think it's also important for the companies, manufacturers or others. They are organized in associations, and they share with associations what are the problems, because we are the ones that can bring their voice to the European Commission, to the national governments. So be organized, be more collaborative, be more transparent also.
Yeah.
I think this is the advice that I give to the companies.
Very practical.
Yeah, very practical.
And implementable.
Yeah.
But you know, transparency is still quite difficult
Yes.
Along the entire textile value chain.
Yeah.
So it's
That's why I'm talking about it.
yeah. What is your point of view regarding an advice to the industry? Industry might be textile industry or garmenting making up.
I think I echo all the thoughts from the speakers. At the same time, I think three words came into my mind. First is accountability, because to comply with those regulations, to collect all the data from the complex supply chain upstream to downstream, is not the only responsibility on the manufacturers. We cannot put that on the manufacturers only. So we need Anna mentioned is collaboration across the industry, not only just manufacturers, but brands, retailers, manufacturers, third-party, audit firms, and non-profit organization. We all have to play a part in this job. And then second word is collaboration, and I already mentioned that really well. And third, but not least, is the harmonization, because I think already some speaker already mentioned there's multiple regulations across America, Europe. There's multiple standards. There's social audit fatigue. How we can harmonize those regulations, make sure that they don't go against each other, right? For example, supply chain due diligence, maybe American regulations may be different from Europe, but if we are serving both markets, we cannot have two systems, two standards. So how we can harmonize those regulation standards? And the other thing is about, on the practical side, the data, how to collect those data. There's different standards about data collection. There's different systems, different platforms. Those platforms really multiply over the past few years, but there is not a single, I should say a single one, but at least there is not one that really meet all those needs. How we can also harmonize the data collection protocol, the system of standard. So I think there's still a big challenge for the industry going forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Van Tichem, you heard standardization is being requested, but what is your advice also?
Well, I echo or support very much what has been said, and these were my points as well, to say we need to work together across the supply chain, bringing the manufacturers and the brands together. That's what we try to do in Euratex. We need to work at global level through IAF, through ITMF. And I'm trying to push this dialogue. We are currently discussing with our Chinese colleagues. We are comparing our DPP with the Chinese DPP, very practically. We have webinars to compare, and ideally, inshallah, try to harmonize different. So all that is ongoing, and we need to keep going on that. And also, what Anna said towards entrepreneurs, please feed your associations, whether it's here in India, whether it's in Europe, whatever, with your concrete proposals, problems, echoes. I sit in the European bubble, far away from the textile manufacturers, so please share your ideas, your thoughts. It will help us to try and create better legislation. The thought, it's a bit philosophical thought, Giuseppe, that I wanted to add. Do we want legislation? No. We would prefer to do without legislation. The problem is that we have a conflict between a collective problem, which is climate change and the planet going down, and individual desire of a consumer to buy something for himself or herself. And the only way to solve that conflict between a public problem and an individual desire is to create a legal framework. Meaning, if we wait for the consumer on the planet to solve our sustainability challenge, unfortunately, it will not happen. So that's why, as a business organization, we don't want legislation, but we have to accept that probably the only way to solve our collective problem that we have, saving the planet, is legislation. It's a bit philosophical what I'm saying, but that's why we are engaged as Eurotex with the Commission to try and create that framework. But then, of course, everything we said before, it has to be a good framework, it has to be enforceable, it has to be clear, etc., etc. But can we do without a legal framework for the textile industry? Unfortunately, probably not.
Mr. Mazzotto, you being president of the International Apparel Federation, what advice would you give to the textile added value chain?
Yeah, they say a lot of interesting things, and for sure this road is compulsory. We need to follow the sustainability and to put some regulation. On the other hand, the market and the consumer, they are hard to accept a higher price for the product, and this is, I think, it's a barrier. Then we need to convince the consumer that they can have a product that have a higher value, and this is the only opportunity we have. On the other hand, in all the supply chain, if we work together, we can find the opportunity to save the cost, and we need to be really been able to try to let €1 in every step of €1 of profit in every step, then all the supply chain can invest in their industry to maintain and to survive. But it's a big challenge for everybody.
Thank you for summarizing and bringing it down to the cost, because our industry at the end, it's cost.
Yeah.
I would like
we have to pay every month the employees. They are our first investment. They are not a cost. The employees is an investment.
I would like to now open the floors for 2 questions, because I think there is a second panel which would start just after this. 2 questions, please be precise.
I think I can speak without mic, it's okay. Good morning to all and everyone. The question is that today a lot is happening on the background. It's a perfect storm, multilateralism, nobody knows what is going to happen. Fractured ecosystem, fractured global supply chains, We are ushering in a new paradigm of wherein China is not giving any width away, India is in the process of trying and stitching FTA, already 11. We expect by around year end, close to 30. And as per our Minister of Textile, yesterday he said we are expecting close to 63% of global that, developed countries where the manufacturing doesn't happen, they are the biggest consumer of textile, for India. So it is a micro question. How do you see that in this changing paradigm, which is ushering into a new normal? Where is India placed? And being here at the Bharat Tex, how realistic you are that India will be able to fill into that void, which is being created? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think we could do a new panel discussion about that. We're talking about legislation, but India, the question, is India growing like this or is India growing like this? We think India will grow. Everyone agrees. It depends on the speed. But I think let's come back to legislation. Are there any questions in relation to legislation? Because we have here experts from the industry, from the associations, from governments. Please.
So I have a question on the data. I think that's something that's really important and relevant to everybody here. I think the challenge that I see is while there is a requirement for that data, each retailer and brand is going to be asking the manufacturer to present that data in multiple different ways. There's going to be, if I'm working with 5 brands, I'm going to have to, recreate that data in 5 different systems, in 5 different ways. There's a lot of investment, there's a lot of cost. Mr. Marzotto has referred to that cost. But I think the cost is really important. And that data collection, and is there any discussion about solutions for how that data can be entered at one time in the most efficient way? Because at the end of the day, it is the manufacturer that has that responsibility.
Maybe you start.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're working on where, if you think about it, and that's why network's important, that as a manufacturer, you enter data once to share it across customers. Now, part of it, the requirements on slightly different, I think that's where it gets back to collaboration, because even stored once, you have to know, well, how do we change it for brand A, B, and C? And I think that's where it's key to have the collaboration between the associations here and the associations like the American Apparel Association and other to define that. And even as a network, we're having that discussion with our customers because they're all doing that. So really making it that kind of the manufacturer is a key part of it and providing it once and making it one place. So, but I think it's collaboration and then technology that makes it a place that instead of a portal where you're entering to each one, a network where here's my data to provide to each one. And so that's one of the things they're working on, but it's still work, right? We're still, I think it's collectively, it's early on. And as I was saying, even the brands are like, everyone's getting ahead of what data should I collect from each tier and where to store it. So it's in the early stages, but I think that's the key on a network perspective for sharing.
Thank you very much.
Very quick. I mean, that should be the advantage of the digital product passport. If indeed Brussels decides, by law that these are the data that need to be gathered across the supply chain, ideally all the brands will align with the legal requirements set by the DPP. And again, as I said before, we don't like legislation, but that's the advantage of having legislation. It sets the framework. It decides by law what data are required. So hopefully once that discussion on which data points, etc., once that discussion is settled, hopefully the brands will align their requirements towards all the manufacturers, align that with what is legally required. So let's hope for some kind of coherence, alignment coming forward. And that's, as I said before, that's why it's important. Europe is thinking about its DPP. China is thinking about a DPP. Others are thinking, we need to make sure that ideally we have one worldwide DPP. It's a bit of dreaming loud now, but that's what we should try to push. Because if you have one legal requirement, set of legal requirements, then for companies, manufacturers, that'll be easier and clean to comply with.
Okay, thank you very much for all this information, for sharing it with us. We are coming to the end of this panel discussion. Afterwards, may I ask the panelists to stay here because there is a vote of thanks for you prepared there, and we'll do some pictures. But please join me in thanking all the panelists that they shared.